This took place on New Year's Eve in 2017. I'm from a suburb outside Cleveland, Ohio, and had just completed a semester at the University of Rochester. Due to personal reasons, I stayed an extra week after the semester ended, spending Christmas mostly alone. On the day of my return, my mood was already sour. The Browns, my favorite team, had just finished a winless 0-16 season. Adding to my frustration, my flight was delayed, causing my family to leave early for a New Year's Eve party without me. I had to drive alone in a spare car, accompanied by our golden retriever, Vera. By the time I got home and packed the car, it was nearly 10 p.m. The drive through Ohio's dark back roads was uneventful until Vera began whining. I realized she needed to go out, so I stopped at a small clearing. While Vera sniffed around, a loud crashing noise suddenly echoed from the woods, startling me. Before I could react, Vera bolted into the forest. Terrified, I chased after her, calling her name. The cold and darkness made it nearly impossible to see, but eventually, I found her trembling and scared. Relieved but shaken, we headed back to the car. Then, the sound of crashing followed us, growing louder. Panic set in as we ran, and somehow Vera led me back to the car. Before leaving, I glanced back at the woods and froze. 3 figures stood at the edge, watching us. I jumped into the car, locked the doors, and sped off. Only after driving for a while did I notice Vera was bleeding, a clean cut below her shoulder blade. Someone had attacked her. I pulled over, used the first aid kit to clean and bandage her wound, and tried to calm myself. The rest of the drive was a blur. I never told my family about the incident, keeping it to myself. Even now, the memory haunts me, especially around this time of year. At 11:01, I made a mistake. I asked a snowplow driver if he could take me to my destination, and he agreed without hesitation. When I asked what to do about my car, he shrugged and suggested I leave it. Reluctantly, I agreed, grabbed my bag, and climbed into the warm cab. The heat was soothing, and I felt the tension ease as we started driving. I told him I was headed to my parents' house and gave him directions. He nodded, but stayed mostly silent. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable at first, but gradually I became uneasy. Then I noticed something strange. He wasn't driving in the right direction. The GPS clearly indicated the opposite way. I asked, trying to stay calm, but his tone changed slightly as he explained we were taking a detour via back roads. Though I didn't know the area well enough to challenge him, his response unsettled me. Soon, we left the highway, and though the GPS recalibrated to show we were heading toward my destination, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Glancing around the cab, I noticed red flags, empty liquor bottles, torn maps, and even a knife wedged between the seats. My pulse quickened, and I realized I needed to act. When we passed a house, the first one in miles, I made my move. I threw the door open, jumped out into the snow, and ran toward the house despite the pain in my leg. The driver shouted after me, rummaging in his glove box, but I didn't look back. I reached the house, banged on the door, and the occupants pulled me inside. They called the police, but by the time authorities arrived, the snowplow was gone. They helped me arrange for my car to be towed and gave me a ride to my parents' house. Though I was safe, I can't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't jumped when I did. After the police left, I tried to shake off the events, but my mind kept replaying the scene in the snowplow. Every detail, the eerie quiet, his dismissive shrug, The way he ignored the GPS stuck with me like a warning I almost didn't heed. Even now, I wonder if he was truly dangerous or if my gut instincts saved me from something terrible. For days, I avoided telling my parents the full story, especially my dad. I knew he'd be furious, and not just because I left my car stranded in a snowstorm. He always lectured me about trusting strangers, and I hated the thought of hearing, "I told you so." But eventually, I couldn't keep it to myself. His reaction was exactly as expected, anger mixed with concern. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "Next time, call me, no matter the time or place. I'll come to get you." I promised I would, though I wasn't sure I'd ever drive in a snowstorm again. My dad didn't press further, but made me promise to install a roadside emergency kit in my car, complete with a portable phone charger and an emergency beacon. Months passed, but the unease lingered. I started double checking my surroundings, locking doors the second I got inside my car, and thinking twice before asking for help. It wasn't paranoia exactly, more like heightened awareness. I shared the story with a few close friends, and their reactions varied from disbelief to anger on my behalf. "That guy could have been anyone," one of them said. "You're lucky you got out." Lucky. That word stuck with me. Was it luck? Instinct? Or had I unknowingly stumbled into something far more sinister? I avoided looking up news reports in the area because I didn't want to know if other people had been less fortunate. The snowplow encounter changed me. It taught me that trust is precious and not everyone deserves it. It also reminded me that listening to my instincts might be the most important skill I'll ever have. Even now, when winter comes around, I think about that night. The sound of the wind against the car windows, the hum of the snowplow engine, the way my breath caught in my throat as I jumped into the freezing air. Some moments never leave you, no matter how much time passes. And if I ever find myself on an icy road again, I'll think twice before flagging down another driver.